The lights in the studio were dim. Not because the show hadn't started, it had. But because something in the air was different. It was supposed to be just another night on live television. The band played its jazzy opener. The audience clapped. The host cracked a few soft jokes. And then the man of the hour walked out, Donald Trump, dressed in his usual suit. Chin high, smile practiced, he waved to the crowd as if the last few years hadn't happened. The applause was polite, a little hesitant, maybe even confused. This wasn't a rally, and Trump wasn't here to argue. He was here for something else. He sat down. The host leaned in. "Tonight," he said, "we're not talking politics. We're talking people." Trump gave a nod. "I like people." Laughter, a little ice broken. For 20 minutes they talked about business, his grandchildren, golf, even his new book. The audience warmed up slowly. But behind the bravado, there was something in Trump's eyes. Tired. Distant. He kept checking his watch. The host noticed. "Mr. Trump," he said carefully, "I hear someone wanted to speak with you tonight." Trump raised an eyebrow. "Who?" The lights dimmed. A screen behind them lit up. Not a logo. Not a flag. Just a live video feed. At first, no one understood what they were looking at. A quiet room. A polished wooden desk. A single man sitting still. Eyes focused straight ahead. And then the words appeared. "Live from Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso." The audience stirred. A few gasps. The man on the screen didn't blink. Then he spoke. "Good evening, Mr. Trump." The accent was soft, French-tinged, and calm. "My name is Ibrahim Traoré. I am president of Burkina Faso." Trump straightened. "I know who you are. Then you know I do not speak lightly." The crowd fell completely still. "I was 13, Ibrahim continued, "when I saw a video of you. Not in a suit, not in power, but talking about building something from nothing." Trump's lips parted slightly. He didn't speak. I didn't understand English well, but I understood the tone. The certainty. The belief in something that didn't yet exist. "You weren't born a soldier. Neither was I, but you said something that night, one sentence. And it stayed with me for years." He leaned forward. "You said, if no one will build the world you dream of, then you must build it yourself." Trump looked down. "Years later, when I stood in the desert with nothing but a uniform and a promise to protect my people." That sentence returned to me. Not because it came from a famous man, but because it came from someone who knew what it was to be alone and still believe. The host sat silent. Even the camera crew stopped moving. Trump was blinking now, faster. His hand on the desk trembled slightly. "I did not come here to praise or to judge," Traoré said softly. "I came to remind you, the world changes, but the impact of our words, our choices, that never leaves." Trump swallowed hard. "Why me?" Ibrahim smiled faintly. "Because despite what people say about you, I never saw a man afraid to speak. And in Burkina Faso, we know the power of a voice." Then, slowly, Traoré reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, folded paper. "This," he said, holding it up, "was a letter written by a 13-year-old boy. Me, it says, one day I will speak with the man who taught me to believe I could build something from nothing." The studio fell so quiet you could hear someone breathe in the fifth row. "And now I have." Trump looked away, eyes glassy. "I'm not the man I was," he muttered. "No," Ibrahim said. "You're more. Because now you've seen what your voice built." The screen faded to black. Trump sat back. For the first time in years, Donald Trump didn't speak. He didn't joke. He didn't posture. He just sat, quiet, still. And then, without warning, his hand rose to his face, and he wiped away a tear. The crowd didn't clap. They didn't cheer. They just watched, because something had cracked in that room. And outside, across the world, millions were already watching. But what none of them knew, not even Trump, was that this call was only the beginning. What would happen next would send Donald Trump across the ocean, not to campaign, not to speak, but to listen. And what he would find in Burkina Faso would change the way he saw power, legacy, and himself. Donald Trump didn't sleep that night. Back at his hotel, after the cameras stopped rolling and the lights went out, he sat by the window staring at the skyline. The letter, the voice, the words, "You've seen what your voice built," he whispered them aloud like a prayer, a confession, a memory. He didn't tell his staff. He didn't alert the media. But by sunrise, a one-way flight to Burkina Faso had been booked. No fanfare, no entourage, just one man, one seat, one mission. Thousands of miles away, in a quiet presidential residence in Ouagadougou, President Ibrahim Traoré stood barefoot on a small stone terrace, watching birds sweep across the pinkening sky. His aide approached quietly. "He's coming," the aide said. Traoré nodded, then smiled slightly. "Let him arrive like any other guest. No press, no security convoy?" Traoré shook his head. "He's not coming here as a president." The wheels touched the tarmac just after sunset. A single black vehicle waited on the runway. No crowd, no ceremony. Only two men stood beside it, one driver, one soldier. Trump stepped off the plane slowly, carrying nothing but a leather folder and a small carry-on. He looked around, disoriented. Then he saw him. President Traoré standing still, dressed simply, no medals, no podium. Trump walked forward. They didn't shake hands. They embraced. It was quick, awkward, honest. "I didn't think you'd come," Ibrahim said. Trump shrugged. "Neither did I." The car rolled slowly through the dusty roads of the capital. Children played barefoot by crumbling walls. Women carried baskets stacked like monuments. Trump stared out the window in silence. "It's not what you expected?" Ibrahim asked. "It's more," Trump replied. They passed markets glowing under lanterns, and murals painted with pride, not precision. They drove deeper until finally they arrived, a modest courtyard, a one-story clay brick home. Vines twisted along the edge of the walls. An old swing creaked in the wind. "This was my first school," Ibrahim said. One-room dirt floor, a chalkboard made from a piece of tin. He pushed open the wooden door. Inside, a single bench, faded drawings on the walls, a broken radio. "She taught me how to read here, my grandmother." Trump stood still. "Where is she now?" "She passed 2 winters ago. But I come here sometimes to remember." A small silence. Then Ibrahim picked up a torn notebook from the corner. "This is the first thing I ever wrote in English." He opened it. In shaky handwriting, the words, "I want to build." Trump swallowed. "That sentence, I've said it many times." Ibrahim looked at him. "I know." That night, they sat outside under the stars on straw mats. 2 presidents. One from towers, the other from sand. Between them, a bowl of rice and stories that didn't need cameras. "I've been called many things," Trump said, chewing slowly. "Most of them not nice." "But you didn't speak to that man on TV." "No," Ibrahim said. "I spoke to the boy who wanted to build." Trump paused. "He's still in there, buried, somewhere." Ibrahim poured water into a cup and handed it to him. "Dig him out." For a long time neither man spoke, just stars, and wind, and the quiet between legacies. The next day, Trump visited a small village school 60 kilometers from the city. The children didn't know who he was, but they waved anyway and laughed when he tried to speak broken French. One little boy with no shoes walked up to him and handed him a mango. "For the tall man," he said. Trump knelt. "What's your name?" "Hassan." "Hassan, you want to build something someday?" The boy nodded, shyly. "A house. For my mother." Trump blinked. His voice caught. That's a good thing to build." Later, in a nearby hut, Trump sat with elders. Women told him how they wove fabric to send their daughters to school. A farmer explained how he turned floodwater into a fish pond. A girl of 16, blind in one eye, recited a poem she'd written about wind and resilience. Trump listened. Not like a politician, but like a student. And when Ibrahim stood up at the end and said, "This is leadership," Trump didn't speak. He didn't need to, because in that moment, he understood something that had taken him 70 years to realize. Leadership isn't volume. It's vision. By the third day, something had shifted. Trump sat in Ibrahim's study, staring at a wall of black and white photos. Children, mothers, streets after rain. "Why do you keep these?" he asked. "They remind me who I work for." Trump stood, slowly walking past the images. His hand hovered over one, a young soldier helping an old man walk through a flood. "This photo," he said quietly, "it's what we forget in power." Ibrahim nodded. "You're not the first to forget," he said gently. "But you might be one of the few who came back to remember." Trump looked at him, eyes damp. "I want to do something," he said. Ibrahim raised an eyebrow. "What?" Trump turned toward the window. "I want to build again." The decision was made quietly. No press conference. No press release. Just 2 signatures on a piece of paper that would ripple across continents. Trump sat with Ibrahim in the courtyard of the presidential palace. Between them lay a blueprint. Not of buildings, but of purpose. A new foundation. "Let's call it something simple," Trump said. "Something real." Ibrahim nodded. The Rebuild Project. It would focus on restoring forgotten schools, funding local builders, empowering communities not just with donations, but dignity. Every dollar would be matched by local effort. No handouts. Only hands joined. But the news didn't stay quiet for long. By morning, photos began to leak. Trump, barefoot, helping lay bricks. A village elder wrapping his arm around him. Ibrahim laughing as he held a paintbrush dripping with blue. Social media exploded. "Wait, what is Trump doing in Burkina Faso? This isn't a stunt. He's actually building. I don't care about politics. This is real." News anchors stumbled through coverage. Networks tried to frame it. But no narrative could hold the truth. Because for once, the moment was unfiltered. No slogans. No spin. Just 2 men who had chosen to build instead of boast. 3 days later, the 2 stood before a small crowd in a dusty field outside Kudugu. Local musicians played soft drums. Children clapped. Behind them stood the first of many projects, a new training center. Ibrahim stepped forward. "We named it not after one man," he said, "but after what he remembered. This is the house of return." Trump looked away, his jaw tight. Ibrahim continued, "Because the most powerful thing a leader can do is come back. To the truth, to the roots, to himself." The crowd clapped slowly, then louder, then longer. Trump stepped to the mic. "I've spent a lifetime building things. Hotels, towers, businesses. But I forgot the most important one. People." He paused. "And I found it again here." A single tear ran down his cheek. "I'm not ashamed of who I was, but I'm proud of who I'm becoming." The audience fell silent. Because for the first time in years, the man in front of them wasn't performing. He was present. That night, the 2 men sat beside a fire on the palace rooftop. Stars blinked like shy witnesses. The air was still. "You changed something in me," Trump said. Ibrahim sipped his tea. "You just remembered." "Still," Trump added, "I'll never be everyone's hero." "You're not supposed to be," Ibrahim said calmly. "You're supposed to be someone's change." Trump nodded slowly. And in that small silence, something heavy lifted. Not forgiven, but understood. The next morning, Trump prepared to leave. The airport was still. No cameras. Just Ibrahim waiting by the stairs of the plane. They shook hands, firm, quiet, with something deeper than respect. "Brotherhood. Thank you," Trump said. "Don't thank me," Ibrahim replied. "Thank the boy who still wanted to build." Trump smiled, stepped onto the stairs, paused halfway, then looked back. I'll be watching and helping. Quietly this time. Ibrahim smiled. That's when help works best. The engines roared. The sky opened, and a chapter closed, not with applause, but with purpose. 4 days later, back in the U.S., Trump was expected to return to business as usual, but something was different. He canceled a press tour, skipped golf, turned down major network interviews. For weeks he stayed mostly out of sight, quietly funneling private donations into the rebuild project, under a different name, but the world hadn't forgotten. Clips from Burkina Faso were still circulating. A video of Trump laughing with barefoot children had reached 200 million views. Ibrahim's speech in the village had been translated into 19 languages. Teachers in rural towns from Texas to Tunisia began citing the House of Return as a model of leadership. And then came the letter. It arrived on crisp parchment, delivered by hand through a quiet diplomatic channel, addressed simply to President Ibrahim Traoré. From one who never thought he'd say this, Trump's handwriting was bold, sincere, a little shaky. I thought I had seen the world. I hadn't. I thought I understood power. I didn't. You showed me that real strength has no need for noise. I'm building again. But this time, it's not made of steel or gold. It's made of memory, of correction, of hope. And maybe, one day, if I do enough good, I'll be worthy of the place you let me see. Ibrahim read it at sunrise, on the same terrace where they'd once spoken beneath the stars. He didn't smile. He just closed his eyes. He whispered, then, begin. Weeks passed. The rebuild project grew fast. But unlike most global campaigns, there was no CEO, no big brand. It was decentralized, built by locals, driven by stories, powered by the belief that dignity was louder than charity. People across Africa began sharing videos under a new tag. #Built with Respect. A woman in Malawi rebuilt a roof for her local clinic. A teenager in Ghana painted a library. A farmer in Niger donated bricks. Not money. It was working. And then, something unexpected happened. A request came from Trump. Not to return to the spotlight, but to return to Burkina Faso. This time, with his son, he wrote, he needs to see what I saw. Not from a screen, not from a speech, but from the ground, from the dust, from the people who never asked for applause, just partnership. Ibrahim replied in 4 words. He will be welcome. When the plane landed, there was no crowd. Just a simple SUV and a single man waiting by it. Ibrahim Traoré. Trump stepped off with his teenage son, a tall, quiet boy in a plain shirt and cap. The son looked unsure, nervous. Ibrahim extended his hand. Welcome, young builder. They drove for hours, past schools, fields, markets, and villages. Everywhere they passed, people waved. But this time, no one stopped them for pictures. They respected the silence. That evening, they arrived at a new site, still unfinished. Surrounded by children painting the walls. Ibrahim handed the boy a brush. No cameras. Just color, the boy smiled. Then dipped the brush into a bucket of yellow. Beside him, his father quietly picked up another brush. They painted until the sun disappeared. No words, only work, only presence. And that night, under a starlit sky, a former president, a sitting president, and a quiet teenager sat cross-legged eating roasted maize with villagers on the edge of a soccer field. The laughter was soft. The joy was real. It wasn't a summit. It was a return, a full circle, a quiet redemption. The next morning, the rising sun washed the hills in gold. The air smelled of dust, roasted millet, and new beginnings. Trump stood alone by the edge of the village, his hands behind his back. His son approached, quietly. I didn't expect this, the boy said. Trump didn't answer at first. Then he looked down, kicked a small stone, and whispered, neither did I. Behind them, children gathered under a newly painted structure. The walls were bright, blue and yellow swirls, wrapped around it like hope. On top hung a wooden sign, "The People's Library for those who build." Ibrahim joined them shortly after, handing the boy a small envelope. "From the kids," he said. Inside was a hand-drawn card, a dozen signatures in crayon. A small note in wobbly English, "You are now one of us." The boy smiled, then hugged Ibrahim. It was unspoken, deep. The kind of embrace that told stories words never could. That afternoon, the three of them, Ibrahim, Trump, and the boy, walked to the edge of a dry riverbed. There, under a tree, an old man was sitting with a rusted drum between his knees. "He's the last griot of this village," Ibrahim said. "He remembers everything." The griot didn't speak English. He looked at Trump's son, pointed at the drum, then patted the ground. The boy sat. He handed him the drum. No instructions. "Just trust." The boy struck once, then again. The rhythm was raw, uncertain. Then the old man smiled and began to sing. Not a loud song, a low hum, like a memory being stitched together from dust and spirit. Trump stood frozen. His eyes welled up. "I spent my whole life trying to build towers tall, enough to be remembered," he whispered. "And this man built memory from silence." Ibrahim looked at him. "Legacy isn't height, it's depth." Trump turned to him slowly, the lines on his face softer. "I wish I'd known that earlier." "It's not too late," Ibrahim sighed. That night they returned to the palace in silence. No music, no welcome party. Just the sound of wheels rolling over sand. Before they parted, Ibrahim handed Trump a folded cloth. Old, faded. Trump opened it. Inside, an embroidered map of Burkina Faso with 2 stitched initials, MT. She was the first woman who taught me to stand up, Ibrahim said quietly. "She stitched that when I said I wanted to be president." Trump ran his fingers over the threads. "And now? She's gone. But she taught me this. Some people build nations. Others build men who build nations." Trump nodded. "Then let me build with what I have left." He turned to his son. "You ready?" The boy grinned. "Can we stay one more night?" Ibrahim smiled. That one smile changed everything. 3 weeks later, they were gone. But something remained. A plaque at the People's Library now held an inscription. In memory of the day 2 builders came and remembered what building really means. But the world wasn't done watching, because what happened next sparked a wave. Back in America, the media caught wind. A clip of Trump, his son, and Ibrahim painting together went viral. Not because of celebrity, but because of something else, sincerity. For once, people didn't argue, they just shared. Quietly, proudly, a woman in Atlanta wrote, "I never thought I'd cry watching them hold a paintbrush." A young activist in Chicago posted, "We don't need perfect men. We need men willing to become better." Churches played Ibrahim's village speech. Youth groups in Brazil started pen pal projects with schools in Ouagadougou. And in a surprise move, Trump's company launched a non-profit wing, naming it after his son. But the most powerful shift happened in policy, because a week after returning, Trump testified before a private panel. "No press, no fanfare. Not here to debate," he said. "I'm here to correct." He handed over a document, personal funds, redirected contracts, and a proposal for long-term rural infrastructure partnerships across West Africa. When asked why, he said, "Because I met a boy who deserves to build more than towers." Then he left. No interviews, no tweets, only action. Meanwhile, Ibrahim's team published a book titled The Brush, the Drum, and the Dust. It sold out globally in 24 hours. And just when the story seemed to quiet down, a new video surfaced. 3-minute clip. No music. No dialogue. Just images. The paintbrush, the crayon card, the griot's face, the sun drumming. At the end, white text on black background. Sometimes greatness isn't loud. Sometimes it just listens. It hit 150 million views in 3 days. And in a world used to noise, it was the silence that echoed loudest. A year later, Trump returned to Burkina Faso, not with cameras. Not even with his son. Alone. No security. No grand entrance. He walked straight to the library, now filled with books in 14 languages. Children looked up, surprised. A little girl handed him a handmade bracelet. No one said much. He sat down, opened a book, and started reading to them. He stayed for hours. At sunset, Ibrahim arrived. They didn't shake hands. They just nodded. Trump reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph, the one they took under the painted wall. He handed it to Ibrahim. "For your wall," he said. Ibrahim smiled. "No, my friend." For hours, as they watched the sun go down, two men once divided by politics, geography, and power, stood side by side. No walls. No microphones. Just one question between them. What else can we build? And the answer? Everything. Because when dignity meets willingness, borders blur, egos melt, and the world inches closer to what it was always meant to be. A home for those who try again. And again, and again.